once again, welcome to today's webinar, Montreal's Centre-Sud Nourishing Neighbourhood. My name is Natasha Pay, and I'm a community animator with Vibrant Communities Canada. I'm here today with Sophie Pétré and Rafaëlle Rinfret-Pilon. Before we get started, I'll just take a moment to introduce both Sophie and Rafaëlle. There we go. These lovely ladies. So first I'll start with Sophie. Sophie is responsible for engagement and development coordination at Corporation de Développement Communautaire, Centre-Sud. She studied special education at Dijon's IRT ESS in France. After working with refugees seeking asylum through the Red Cross in France for several years, Sophie spent 6 years as a community-based social worker with families in Montreal. She is a specialist in family intervention, group therapy, and Carl Rogers's person-centered approach. In Quebec, Sophie discovered the work of neighborhood roundtables and the power of collective impact. Successfully graduating from Dynamo's Shared Leadership Program in 2013, Sophie also learned about the art of housing and became part of the teaching committee in 2014. She is a certified professional coach in neurolinguistic programming and is passionate about development of humans in a community context, and about the power of collective intelligence. She is convinced that everyone is capable of contributing to society's evolution. Sophie likes to foster collective work environments that provide creative and inspiring spaces in which everyone can find their place and leave their mark. And Rafaëlle. Rafaëlle studied international development and social anthropology at Dalhousie University in Halifax. She worked for 10 years as a community organizer with immigrants and women in Montreal. She has been an engagement and development coordinator at CDC Centre-Sud for 5 years. She coordinates the work of Table de Développement Social Centre-Sud, a consultation mechanism that brings together 30 members representing the community, institutions, businesses, elected officials, and citizens. Trained under Dynamo's Leadership Rassembleur MC program in 2012 to 2013 and the Art of Housing in 2014, Rafaëlle is passionate about the place and the integration of citizens in all stages of socio-economic development of the district. She has a deep conviction that community development is the responsibility of one and all. Rafaëlle is passionate about ensuring that the population is taken into account when implementing actions on the ground in order to maximize their durability. So welcome, Sophie and Rafaëlle, and thank you so much for joining us on today's broadcast. I will pass it over to you now because you have a fantastic presentation, and I will pop back on when we come back to the questions period.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. We prepared a presentation in English. There might be some little mistakes, but
It's my first English, so
we'll be fine. Anyway, okay, so first of all, just to explain a bit who we are. Like the CDC Centre-Sud is a community organization. We have, we're an umbrella group for about 50 to 60 community organizations in Centre-Sud, in the neighborhood. And we are part of the neighborhood roundtable groups. In Montreal, there's 30 neighborhood roundtables that are funded through l'Initiative de soutien développement social local. It's a fund that comes from United Way, Centraide du Grand Montréal, so our United Way in Montreal, and the City of Montreal and the health services for the region of Montreal. So the idea of the community roundtables, how we work, our mandate is to lead social development dialogue in neighborhoods. So having people that come to the table, when Natasha was talking about the Table de Développement Social Centre-Sud, this is the roundtable we manage. And we have people that come from all spectrum of the area, this being community organizations, citizens, elected officials, people from the police, all kind of spectrum of the area. Yeah. So our mandate is to contribute to improving the quality of life of the people living in the neighborhood, so the living environment, also fighting against poverty and social exclusion, and we emphasize on the question of participation and citizen. If you click on this link, there's a little video that lasts about 3 minutes that explains what is a community roundtable. So you're more than welcome to look at it after our presentation, and it's very nice. So there you go. In Montreal, these are all the community roundtables, just to give you an idea of how we are dispersed on the island. So, and Centre-Sud is a borough that's very centrally located, as you see. It's on your right, so now I can't see it, but anyways, it's right there. So this is just to show you the extent of where the roundtables are in the borough. There you go. Alors, Sophie.
And so we wanted to share with you our food network project. So when we began in 2015, we wanted to create a process of mobilization of our partners and the citizens of Centre-Sud around the question of food. When we speak about partners, we speak about people from community organization, from the borough, and from the health network. Just to know that in our area, when we began this process, there was two views of the food network. There were some organizations who were part of the charity approach, and there were organizations who were part of the food self-sufficiency approach. And so there was different way to work about the food issues in the area. And so we wanted to reconcile those partners to have the same goals about the food network. So it's what you can see here. For that, we choose to have different strategies. And so you can see on the timeline the different degrees of mobilization that we had during this process. To reconcile those partners, we wanted to have major meetings. So we had one on January and another in May with more than 60 partners to speak about different subjects. And we did some focus group with citizens because we wanted to replace the words of the poorest citizen of Centre-Sud in the center of our discussions. And so those focus group was to January to March every 2 weeks, and with a big consultation in summer. And after that, we have a third degrees of mobilization, was the large community gathering. To know the real impact of the services offered in our area. Thank you. So just some pictures about the two major meetings of our partners. During this meeting, we wanted to create a portrait of food supply services because we didn't really know who did what exactly. So it was the first step in January to realize that everybody did a lot of things, but it was really difficult to work together. So we wanted to create some solutions about that. And in May, so in the right of the slide, we had a lot of conversations between the different views of food networks. So we spoke about this charity approach and the reality of the poorest people in Centre-Sud who went to have food, in alimentary banks.
Food banks.
Food banks,
yeah.
Thank you. And the reality of what do we eat in Centre-Sud, what do we find in grocery when we have not a lot of money.
And in both, I think it's important to say that in both of those big meetings, we had people from community organization, for example, that it wasn't their major of the organization, but we invited everyone of all type of organization, being also the elected officials and having and the people from the borough, but having people that were there that had an interest in food. So you didn't have to be the responsible for the food bank. You could be just in like a family center that had once a week a community kitchen, for example. Everyone was invited
because of the population that they worked for.
Exactly.
And so our focus group, it was the very first time in Centre-Sud that we worked like that. like that is what is with some group where the citizens who were involved in were experts of their own reality, of their own poverty. And so they were there to speak about that and to speak about the day-to-day reality. And so we got 2 social workers too, from community organization who were there, and 2 people from the public services. And so there was a big group, but we worked together, and it was inspired by the avec process, the with process. You can have the link here to discover this process. It's amazing. It's really a philosophy about the facts to say, okay, we are human people, and we have different experiences in our lives, and so we are all experts of something. And when we decided to make those groups with this philosophy, so the citizens were not there just to be citizens. They were there because they knew the best what was the reality of the food network for the poorest people in Centre-Sud.
Yeah. Just to say that the process comes from Quebec City. It's an experience that was done with Université Laval, I think, in Quebec City.
Yeah.
So Laval University, and
it's a research.
It's a research, but it was very inspiring. So we adapted it for us.
And so you can see in the picture we made a collaborative map about the food habits of the people of the group. And I say that because, yes, in the summer after we did a citizen consultation with the citizen of the focus group who were with me, and we compared the suggestion that we did in the focus group with the reality of the people that we met on the streets of Centre-Sud. And so we did a questionnaire via internet. We did a paper questionnaire because we meet people, you know, in the park and in the festivals and etc. And we did a collaborative mapping with pictogram, because there is a lot of people in Centre-Sud who didn't know writing, right?
Yeah,
how to write, or who didn't speak French or English well. So it was easier to work with some pictures. And so more than 300 people respond to our question and make the consultation. So after that, we had a lot of informations. Yeah. Sorry, we discover how it works, you know, in webinar. So, okay. And with all the information, we did a very big meeting with citizens and partners too, and we work to write together a vision about what were the wishes of the population when we spoke about the food network and the reality of the food network in Centre-Sud. And so you can see here the vision of the feed ourselves. So do you want to read it, Raphaëlle? Yeah. Because my accent is
so the vision is we want to federate a food network within which we would find all services allowing to have access to a permanent food quality offer. A global system containing production, transformation, marketing, education, and which favors citizens' implication and pride. We want a food chain system based on democratic values and of inclusion, accessibility, solidarity, proximity, and ecology. We want a food offer visible and known by all, which ensures and supplies a diversity of product accessible to the whole population of Centre-Sud. So that's what we're working on.
And so to share this vision, we organized a last event on March. So it was more than 1 year after the beginning of the process. And so we closed this process with more than 100 people who came, who were not people who were involved in the process, you know, during the year. There was a lot of new people who wanted to have information about this vision and this work, etc. And during this time, they worked and chose 2 projects that they wanted to be realized in Centre-Sud be the first concrete project, the beginning of the reality of this vision. And so they choose a mapping of services on the internet and on paper, because they say and they discover that a lot of people didn't know the services in Centre-Sud. They wanted to see another project was a collaborative grocery store, very inspired by the model of the Sloop Food Co-op in New York City or La Louvre in Paris. So a place where you can have food and where you can be involved like a citizen.
So concretely, this is the food mapping that we have. It's available now. It's on. You can see the web page. This is an example of the web page. You find all the services that are available that can help people living in borough or passing through the borough. So to get food, people where you can learn to cook, where you can learn to garden, like all this. It's a website, well, web page that's very participative. So this is there. It also exists in paper. So for people that don't have access to internet, to be the more accessible possible. So
you can find it, yes, almost everywhere in the area.
Exactly. So we answered that need, and the other project is that was more than a year ago. The web page was ready, but now since May, the market, Marché Solidaire Frontenac, which is a community market in the area, they have started to change their way of working to be more inclusive and to become a participative market. So now, since May of this year, of 2017, anyone can become a member for, I think it's like $5 or something, very accessible.
It's $5 a year, and I think that it is $15 for
all your
life.
There you go. So very accessible, and you, in exchange of 4 hours a month of volunteering, get 20% off of your supplies you can buy in the market, mostly vegetables, but they also have like honey and other little things.
Yeah, and there were really good prices before that. So
exactly.
You can imagine.
Yeah, so now the prices are even better.
Yeah.
And what is very interesting is that they only started in May this new program in some ways, or the new way of working in the market. And now they already have 45 people that are registered. So as volunteer, giving time at different moments. So they already had habits to have volunteer, but now it's even more. It's like not only volunteering, but your involvement is greater. So this is really something that's going to be really interesting to follow up to see how it's going to grow. So that's one thing.
Yeah, and it's a very good example of what can be done, with this sort of process.
Exactly. I'll let you switch because the computer's not my friend. So, and after all this process of the Food Network project, we ended up. There's a project that emerged that's called the Quartier Nourricier, Project Quartier Nourricier, or the Nourishing Neighbourhood project. It's a project that, as you see, nourrir, which means like it's to feed the neighborhood, to make it greener, and to share. So these are the three major reasons for it to exist in some ways. So, and the project emerged, that emerged from this is that concretely we built a community, it's a greenhouse. It's a community managed greenhouse. So we have a really nice greenhouse that was built this year. There's a permanent building also that was building infrastructure that was built for the Marché Solidaire Frontenac that used to only run 7 months a year. Now they can run almost 10 months, 10 months because January, February is really cold. Yeah. But it's longer time. So the market and who we at the CDC are coordinating the project, but we have those three major partners that were already in the area that have their own expertise also. So the project itself was really how to get community organizations that are very present, very strong, or in what they do, and get them to work together in this
in the same project.
Exactly. So the three organizations are Carrefour Alimentaire Centre-Sud, who manage the Marché Solidaire Frontenac. So they're responsible of selling the goods, the distribution. There's Centre-Urbain, they are strong with, they have a horticulture as their strength. That's what they do. They do horticulture, but they also supervise youth that are in reinsertion project. So they get them to
have an experience,
exactly.
With
gain skills in horticulture. So they're the ones who are working in the greenhouse right now. Those youth, and also la SEM, which is an organization, it's called la Société Éco-Citoyenne de Montréal. They have a very strong link with the citizens of the area. They're very strong with citizen involvement. So they are responsible of all that part of the project. So having citizen committee, thematic workshops, they're the ones who do that. And so to make this project happen, the Quartier Nourricier, we obviously had funding. First, well, we have, since 2014, we have the Integrated Urban Revitalization Program that financed the whole food network project. So with that, we did the first part. And then in 2015, we had an opportunity with a project that a program that comes from the city through Montreal, the city of Montreal. It's called Imaginer Réaliser Montréal 2025. That program gave us a bit more than $400,000 to work with. And that built the greenhouse and built the market infrastructure. Yeah. And then we had other programs that were available through the city, and the Quartier Intégré program that financed some other parts, and then Quartier 21 program, it's a program that's more for greener space, but also urban agriculture, and that's more like a health-based program that comes from Quebec City. And there's Fondation du Grand Montréal Finance also, which is a private fund, helped fund the whole thing. Yeah. And in 2016, Gaz Métro, which is a private company that's based in Centre-Sud, decided to help us with the heating of the greenhouse. So they're paying for the gas. So that's their expertise. Yeah. So we're very happy with that.
So it's free for us
exactly.
to heat the greenhouse, and it changed everything
Absolutely.
About what we wanted to do with that, because we thought that we just can be open about 2 or 3 months during the year, and with Gaz Métro now it can be
longer.
A year open greenhouse. So you can imagine that there were some difficulties about these different opportunities funding, because for each program there were some criteria, and so we have to work together, and they had to learn to work together too. So
absolutely.
There was a lot of very good conversations about that.
Yeah. But the thing is that what's interesting about this also is that the whole build-up, like you see the funding evolution. Yeah. We did not do this program to fit this project to fit in a program. We had this project. We knew it wasn't all funded by one program specifically. Yeah. But we thought, okay, let's just start with this, and we'll build up with like other opportunities. And luckily enough, it worked. Okay, so time is flying.
Yeah.
So, so now this is a graph that sort of shows how our whole project is working. So obviously the goal is to build together a united ecological food chain system at the scale of Centre-Sud district. This is the goal of Quartier Nourricier. So we have a productive and educational greenhouse that's co-managed by the community organization, as I was saying. So there's Plant for Neighborhood Gardens that we give out to the people. This year we gave out lots of tomato. We flooded the neighborhood with tomatoes. We'll be eating tomatoes like all through summer. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. We might make tomato sauce at some point. I don't know. There's youth that who live work experience. As I was saying, there's a in reinsertion that are working with Sentier Urbain. Right now there's 5 of them and there's a waiting list. So supposedly the experience is really good.
Yeah.
There's volunteers who are involved and that learn throughout in that greenhouse.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's fresh and nutritious never know how to say it. Nutritious food
distributed by the Marché Solidaire Frontenac,
exactly.
like we said.
Yes, and there's an offer of citizen activity programming and urban agriculture and food supply that is given right next to the greenhouse itself, where you have a little gazebo where people eat, and there's the citizen involvement is, as we said, managed by La SEM.
Yeah, they choose all the activities during the summer in this place.
Yeah,
just near the greenhouse.
Exactly, and it also there around the greenhouse there's a network of sharing and learning of gardeners. So there's more urban farming and all this, and the idea is to have more and more gardens all around the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so here you will have some examples about the consultation, because we involve citizens and residents about the greenhouse. So you have here, for example, of what are the priority actions for the people who lived in the area of the greenhouse.
So that we went to see them a bit more than a year ago to see, like, what would you want before everything was organized.
Yeah.
We pre-consulted a lot
to
make sure that everyone, well, the most people possible were. So things that came out were, for example, increase the edible arrangement. This is what we hear by that, is that people say, like, let's just grow food everywhere. So instead of planting flowers on the corner of a street, you can plant like cherry tomatoes. You can just pick a cherry tomato while you wait for your bus. Or you can have, like, fake lots, could be like with box gardening that everyone's like guerrilla gardening in some ways. And also different things like developing technique of production throughout the year, food production, or encourage store to have zero waste, and redistributing the perishables also. And also the fourth idea was to develop a local currency. So all this, we're keeping this in mind while we're going in the project. So it's not, we'll see if it's us that follows it through and make it happen, or if it's other organizations or the citizens themselves that get involved. This will have to be seen as we go.
You can see the greenhouse here and different activities that
are happening. Yeah, exactly. So,
and to finish.
So a beautiful greenhouse also on the top left, and you see on the right also the group that was involved in making this happen. We're not there, but our boss is there.
Yeah.
And one thing, have like the actors of the different community organizations, but also the key factor that made this happen is that we have people from the borough and people from the city center, from Ville-Montréal, were so, like, really believed in this program, especially this project, especially the people from the borough. From day one, they got the vision, they wanted to get involved as well, and they really made it happen.
Yeah, and they worked a lot for that.
Yes, and they negotiated with there's like so many things that happened because we had the city with us, and that like after this is how, you know, having these public actors was necessary to go on.
Yeah.
Like, elected officials also were for it as well. And this is also the structure of the market. So the market itself is right next to a metro station, Frontenac Metro, and you see how beautiful it is. And finally, I have to go. Finally, if you want more info, you can go on quartiernourricier.org or on the CDC Centre-Sud, our website, to get more info.
Yeah.
So
you can send us emails, and we are always happy to speak about this project.
And for us, this is just the beginning. In some ways, it's like we know that what we've started is something that will grow. Like, as plants grow throughout the summer, we believe that this project will grow, and more people get involved. And it's really, people are really passionate about it, so it's amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Can't hear
Sorry,
you.
I was talking on mute. Thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, before you guys wrap up, I was wondering if I can get you to answer one more question. For those of you on the line who weren't with us during the neighborhood event that just happened uh, at the beginning of June, Sophie and Rafael actually did a live tour that I had the pleasure of going on with you guys, and we got to see kind of the different elements, the greenhouse, and where all the activities took place. And you did a really great tour, so thank you for doing this online. But one of the things that you had mentioned, that beautiful mural that you had in your PowerPoint presentation, in person, like you can't quite see the scale of it here, but it's huge. It's hanging up in the center where you guys work out of, and it's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
But you had talked a little bit about the visioning process and how
Yes.
you brought all of these different, citizens, public health organizations, how you brought everyone together to get at this vision. And I know it can be a little bit messy. Everybody is coming from a different place. They have their own vision. But are you able to talk a little bit about how you did that visioning with them? I thought it was a pretty creative process.
I think that it's important to know that we had to have different strategies because we didn't work in the same way to join our partners. With them, we work day to day. You know that we know them very well, and it's very easy to invite them to different gatherings. So there is, and food was. Like Raphaëlle said, that food was a problem for everybody, so everybody wanted to speak about that. So it was the easy part was the gathering with our partners in 2 different times and to a specific conversation too. On the other way, it was to join the citizen, and it was not the same way, the same strategy to us, because we have to create the relationship, and for that we work a lot with the community organization who were
already in touch with
already in touch with them. So when we speak a lot with the community organizations about our project and about the focus group, for example. And so they send us names and people who wanted to participate to this exercise. And after, for the other gathering, it was for us very important to invite people and to invite them for something specific. And so, and each time we wanted to have some goals, because it's not the same thing to create prototypes, for example, to build the vision, and it's not the same thing to speak about some project and some solutions and some so have a specific goal and an invitation for the people, and to share a lot in different way. I'm sorry, I will just switch in French just to de passer. Sorry, I don't have the words. D'avoir différentes stratégies de communication.
It's like communication throughout this process was very important. And like way we communicating, like saying how we invited people, but also for what we invited them. And it wasn't always the same people that came to these events, because sometimes it was people that were really, like, for example, in community organizations, sometimes you had the directors that were there. Some other time you had the workers that were directly in contact with the population. And it's, it's like, and you didn't have to be, everyone had a say also. Like, this is one thing that you said at the beginning of the presentation, saying we had food charity in one side, and like you had the charity approach and then you have the self-sufficiency approach, and both of them are, it's not like one or the other is good. Both are good. They're part of the network. But we had to break this in some ways, because this is how our neighborhood worked. It's like, no, we have the right way, and like they're doing it wrong, and they didn't talk to each other. So by us not being responsible for any kind of services in food per se, we were like neutral in all this. So having all these people being invited to have a new conversation. This is what was the whole goal, is to stop, like get out of your existent way of like, this is our way of thinking. You can come with that, but have a new discussion. And this new discussion made a lot of new things emerge, and we also, it led the opportunity to bring the voice of the people, because we were talking for them, and for once we said, no, let's get them to talk for themselves and tell us what they need instead of us telling them what they need. So that was the whole idea in some ways.
And what are the questions that we wanted to answer together?
Yeah.
And if we have different questions, we will have different answers.
Absolutely.
And it's very important. And when the questions are based on the needs and the talking with people and citizens, it's a very different way to have conversation, because we can speak a lot, for the people when we work for them. So it's very easy, and when we have the question that came from the citizens, it's a part for us of the process.
Absolutely.
And, speaking of engagement, we're getting lots of questions through the questions box, and I definitely encourage people to continue submitting your questions. We did have a few in advance, and a lot of them centered around that engagement and continued engagement. And how do you sustain engagement among citizens? And one was specifically looking at collective impact, because you started with from a roundtable. So how would you say you have sustained your community engagement in Centre-Sud, and do you feel that collective impact has played any particular role in this, or how would you do you think the sustaining a collective impact initiative is any different than any other type of community engagement?
Wow. Well, the thing is that it did come from the community roundtable, in the sense that we were talking about food security or food issues like forever in this bureau, and the idea is to have a new discussion, like we just said, was brought new people in the conversation. So instead of having, let's say, 10, because how community organization, how it's organized in Montreal, for example, is that there's a lot of, we have like these big round tables, but you also have like smaller tables where you have like specifics. So we had like round table that was only for people that work on food issues. And those 12 organizations had like some kind of a monopoly, like a monopoly.
They are the only ones.
They are the ones who were, exactly. They were the ones who talked about if there was issues, they had to find ways to fix it. And at one point it's like, no, you can't just always have these 12 organizations. This is why, in some ways, of democratizing the discussion and opening it up and asking new questions, we had new answers, we had new ways that came out. And this is where I think it got interesting, and this is where people wanted to get involved, because they were maybe tired of having also the same discussion all through these years. And at one point, it's like when you're always working for to try to answer, okay, let's have less poverty in the neighborhood, more food, but you're only, people need to have better food, but your only answer is the food bank. No, we know it's not the food bank. So in some ways, it's like opening it up the food bank. It just like brought fresh air. Like they're like, oh my God, at last, we're not the only one that have an answer. And they knew, but no one was coming to the table necessarily giving them a hand in some ways. So
for the sustained engagement, I think that you have to have people who just work for that.
Yes.
You have to have one or two people who will organize the big picture, because you have to trust the process. When you put the citizen voice in the center of all the conversation, something magic will appear. But for that, you have to have people on the ground to meet citizens, to make people speak together, and to choose maybe different represented to not work with the same people all the time, because there is a very long process. You know, it is more than a year, and it was very difficult to have the same people around the table. And I think it's not a good thing to have the same people, because sometimes
the energy just goes, and it's okay.
When you ask people to make you know, just a little walk with you and to answer something, and if they wanted to stay they can, but if they want to go out, it's possible too. You have to be flexible for that, and to have a very good communication, because when people, you know, sometimes people can't be there. It's not possible to be on a gathering or to be on a meeting, or so you have to call them back, and you have to give the information on the internet, or when you speak with them, because keep in touch all the time. And maybe at someday some people will say, and I think it arrived at,
we've seen it.
at the last happening, and you see people who say, hey, you know, I read all you did during 1 year, and I say, yes, today I want to come. And so you know, it's a big picture to think about, and to have people who are who
this is what we do.
Yeah.
How do you say that?
You can answer for everybody, you know, for the process.
Yeah.
It's in like really investing in community engagement, really investing in that communication, community engagement, doing it very intentionally.
Exactly.
And sometimes we don't properly, I think a lot of times we don't have the ability to properly invest in our communications and the engagement that we do, and we might not be connecting with the people out there who are ready to connect with us. Kind of like you were talking about the food banks, and you know, engaging other players at the table to have that discussion.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that just to I forgot.
Okay. You know what I discover? I discover that when there is something that I don't know how to do, there is always somebody in the area who knows.
Exactly.
And so it's easier to go to meet those people who know how to do what I don't know what to do, and so to give.
You give, like, you have the stick of like, I'm talking now, you're talking, and like it's, you know, it's like the everyone has a space, and so all through this process, I just remembered the committees were often like for a 3 months, 4 months, 6 months period, never more. Even if the whole process lasts a year and a half, like this is the time we ask you to get involved if you want to, and after that we'll see if you still want to stay. If you don't have time anymore, all good, you know, and some new people will come to the table. And it's less frightening for people to get involved, and it's also and we feed them really well also. Food is central.
Food, you know, and somebody to stay with the kids, because when you work with citizens, and when you wanted to work with families, and all the meetings are on the evening because people work, and so you have to have somebody who stay with the kids. And there is some details, but very important to make the things happen.
Yeah, and we actually had somebody write in just now wondering about your volunteers. A lot of the citizens that you're talking about are volunteers. They're not getting money for the work. So how do you sustain that volunteer base?
That's a good question. You know, in fact, during the first time of the focus group in the WIZ process, we didn't give them money because we spoke a lot about that, but we had gift cards, and so we can give them some gift cards, because
for like pharmacy, for example, or
it was several of meetings, and it was of the evening, and it was 4 hours of volunteers, and so we wanted to give them something, not money, but something else. And after, it's like, you know, there was some rhythm, and people spoke to people who spoke to people to say, hey, it's pretty cool to be involved in this group because things happened.
Yeah.
And it's just not dreamed and, oh, what do you want to do, da, 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 and after nothing. And we wanted to show them that very quickly we can do things.
Yeah.
And so when Raphaëlle showed you, the map, it was very important to us that this map was available very quickly to show them that, okay, you said to her that you wanted more information, so it's down.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when you involve, it works, and it's not just for say that citizens are involved, and maybe I think that that's one of the part, because we redo that in other committees, and there was no money and no gift cards, and people were there every week.
The citizens were more involved even than the partners.
So
it's like they weren't even paid, but they were there and they knew that their words would be there would be a follow-up after what they said, and that our intention was so clear, and that we weren't just there to hear them and then put the report on the pile and forget about it. So.
And there is trust is built between us, and the relationship is very important because they know that they are part of us now.
Yeah.
And it's equality and equanimity. I think that we can have the both, but it's really hard. And it's not because it works today that it will work tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to build it every day and every day with different people. And
wow.
I don't know if we answer well. But
No, perfect. I think what we heard was quick wins, really listening to people, and basing all of your actions on what people are feeding back to you, so that they know that people feel heard, that what they said was important, and that they are helping to direct. They really have a stake in what is going on.
Absolutely.
So one of the other pre-event or pre-webinar questions that we had was about food specifically, and in your opinion, this person was asking, what is the role of good, healthy food to a poverty reduction strategy?
It's a very big question too, and to be honest, the first thing that we thought with Raphaëlle when we read it was that in the focus group, when I spoke to people who lived in very difficult situation, what they say to me was that have a good food and healthy food didn't change their situation. They won't be less poor after that, but it made it easier to live this situation. And it was the first thing that I was thinking about.
Especially like fresh produce, for example. We know it's so expensive to have fresh produce, so that's it. It's, I'm as poor, but at least I have fresh produce.
Because everybody know that the first thing that we cut when we don't have the budget to pay everything in our life is so to have access to a good and healthy food for the same price than the crap. It's a choice that I can make when I'm in a difficult situation, because it is the lack of choice who is difficult when you are in this sort of situation, because it's just one way when you have just $2 or $3 for your food for the week.
Yeah, the dollar store is limited in the type of product you can buy, let's say.
Yeah.
So
or the food bank.
Does it reduce poverty? I don't know, but maybe it reduces the feeling of poverty. And I don't know, le poids.
The heaviness of it. And the burden of poverty in some ways.
And I remember somebody who said to me that he didn't know he was poor before that somebody tells him that he was poor. He says poverty is a feeling. It's a way of life too, and it's a reality. And so when you can have some good products and some good feeling about the fact that I can have a good food too, it changes the feeling that you have about the situation that you live.
Mm-hmm. And I think more and more we're recognizing that poverty, the definition of poverty, includes inclusion. Being able to participate in your community and to be able to, go to a grocery store and purchase things, and that feeling of not being able to afford produce or products like anyone else would buy. That is that internal feeling of I'm living in poverty and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Really interesting. Somebody else was just asking, is it challenging to only focus on food, given other things like housing, access to work, etc.? They're so intertwined. Did some people get turned off with the focus of food?
No. Sophie worked on food. I worked on housing.
We work together all the time. But for this part, it was very focusing on food, and maybe it was because this question was not addressed before. So it was the first time in Centre-Sud with citizens. I think that we can speak about food. So it was easy to keep the focus, but it had to have an end too, because after that we have a very bigger process like that, but about all the subjects.
But throughout the discussions, also, like I'm just thinking of one of the big gathering we had. Like we them to do prototypes on like what was like how could we answer. We had a big food issues, blah blah blah, and people said, for example, I was sitting at a table where there's a lot of people that were there that are very involved in housing and stuff, and they said, well, first of all, you need to have an apartment that has more than a 2-burner stove, so these questions are intertwined. So food itself, you need to have places to cook food, you need to have places to buy the food, you have to have like for example, on our major street, Ontario Street is a street that has hardly any grocery store, or one of the most expensive grocery store in Montreal is in our neighborhood, where people are poor. So it just doesn't make any sense. So these issues would come out in discussions, because food itself is, you don't talk about food on its own. It's part of the big spectrum, and this is why when we talk about food network, we're thinking of food in the big spectrum. So,
because if you want more grocery, you have to have an economic development plan for your neighborhood. If you want to have more people involved in collective projects, etc., you have to learn to live together. So everything is
and housing projects that have like family oriented, where there's like yards that are big enough so you can maybe garden in the back. So all these things were thought of and talked about, and it's part of what we're going to put in place in the future for the most of our capacity. But that's it. So we never spoke of food on its own. It was in a broader spectrum as well. It's pretext, a reason. Like
it was a reason to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
The instigator, the initiator. We're actually looking at something. We were talking about this just before we came live on the air. In Vibrant Communities, we're looking at the idea of game changers. We've identified 8 game changers in poverty reduction, and it's the idea of that, 1 or 2 things where you can really focus your energy, like food or like housing, that has ripple effects. So when you provide people accessible, nutritious food, what are the ripple effects? What else can they then afford? Do we have healthier people who are able to focus more in school, in jobs, that kind of thing? And I think it gets at all of those other things that are intertwined around food and poverty and that kind of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say we're starting to run out of time. We have lots of great questions coming through. about food security and different types of gardening and the applicability of neighborhood strategies to rural areas. I'm wondering if we can wrap up with just a thought from each of you. We've talked about a lot of different things today. And I'm wondering, in all of this, considering your history with the project, is there one thing that you would like people to walk away with from, or walk away today with knowing? Something that you think would have helped you when you first started the initiative?
Well, I think one thing, maybe what we were talking about before we got on the air, is that, our canvas was pretty structured in this whole process, but we were so flexible also, and I think, have a strong intention, have a strong canvas, but just a lot of flexibility inside. It's like a cookie that's like undercooked inside, but like really nicely cooked outside. Once again, the food. I think I'm hungry. So, but this is what I think. This is like the way. This is what made this possible, I think, and it's the relationships, building relationship, trust with our partners, with the city, with the people of the borough. This is for me.
And for me, trust the process.
Yes.
And trust the fact that when you choose to make everybody work together, make sure that everybody can have a place, can have right to say what they have to say, and trust the process that the magic will happen. And when you based a project, a collective project about that, money arrive.
Yeah.
And so if you return the team and the scheme, and that you don't focus on what responds to the money, but what responds to the needs of our people, money arrive after that.
Yeah.
Because people are inspired like you are, and so they wanted to
want to
be
get
part
involved.
of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so easy to, want to script everything out, to have an idea in your head of exactly how you want things to go and exactly what role you want everyone to play. But the reality is, people don't always fit into that, but people have their own ideas. And, if the need is there, they will, people will step up, and things will happen.
The second thing takes time.
It takes time. Yeah.
Relationship
and
building.
it's okay.
You can't do that in 3 months.
No.
So if you want to do that, you have to have the time and to let the time
to
be relationship.
Thank you so much. And speaking of time, we're right out of time. So thank you so much again, Sophie and Rafael, for being on the webinar with us today. Hannah, if you go to the next slide, we just have a couple of closing announcements. So we would love for you to stay connected with us, to Tamarack, to Vibrant Communities, and to Deepening Community. This is a crossover webinar that we've done today. With our two communities, one focused on poverty reduction and collaborative ways that we do that, and the other looking at how we deepen community, especially in neighborhoods, and looking at asset-based community development. If you'd like to keep in contact with us, for the Poverty Reduction Network, you can subscribe to Cities Connect. It's a bi-monthly newsletter. And for the Deepening Community Neighborhood community, you can subscribe to the Seeker's Journal. Again, that goes out bi-monthly on alternating months. And please feel free to visit us at www.vibrantcanada.ca and www.deepeningcommunity.ca. We'd love to hear from you. If you go to the next slide, we're actually going to be in person. This is our big 5-day event with Tamarack. We'll be in Vancouver, BC from September 25th to 29th, looking at those big ideas of change. Again, the critical role that citizens play in creating change, organizations, governments, how we co-create cities together. We'll have 250 to 300 change makers from Canada, the States, and around the world, and we hope you'll be there with us there as well. And then if you go to the next slide, I think it's just a thank you to say we appreciated everybody joining us today, for sending your comments and questions. If you do have any more comments or questions about this webinar, please send them to me. My email is there, natasha@tamarackcommunity.ca. We're always looking for ways to improve, and we will be sending the slides and the recording of today and a follow-up in a couple of days. So thank you again, everybody, to Sophie, Rafael, my colleagues in the background, and for everybody online. Have a great afternoon.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Take care.
Bye.